Hey guys, today I'm going to be painting the Koi Daimyo from Rising Sun. Now, this is actually a really fun clan, and I really want to get it completely painted soon, just because, first of all, it's all female, which is kind of cool, but they have these really long flowing robes, and they're just, I think, very visually distinct, which I kind of like, and overall, I just think they're kind of a cool clan anyway in the game with the, kind of the money situation that they have. But you know, looking at this one, it looks pretty fun, looks pretty nice, some splotches of color, but mostly white. And we'll get into the white in no time, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, guys, let's get right into it and start prepping the miniature. Okay, so as you know, I always show this kind of prep stage here, and this one isn't terrible. I had a little bit of a nub here, or I don't know, a little bit of excess plastic, probably where they poured it into the mold, I assume. And then obviously the mold line kind of right next to it, but nothing here is really hard to get to. Luckily, you know, again, Coleman or Not tends to do a pretty good job in placement of these. So like it's not like across the fan blades or anything like that where it'd be like almost impossible to get. And it's pretty minor anyway, so I believe I get it all in one pass and do a pretty good job at it. Here in the hair and the that's kind of difficult, but I still manage, so it must have not been too bad. There are some times where I just can't seem to get it, and this one seemed pretty okay. Alright, as always, I prime in gray, but we're going to touch a bit on that as well. So we're going to start out here with skeleton bone on the fan. Now while I'm painting that, I want you to kind of take a look at the miniature, especially like on the base and stuff like that, where it's kind of really well in focus here. And notice I do a light dusting. The different people prime differently. One of my friends who also paints miniatures, he does quite heavy priming, so he'll actually do a few passes on priming. And it might lose a little bit of detail, but has really good coverage. I'm showing you this right now, I'm pointing this out, because first of all, it's going to come up during the white. And second of all, this is as much as you need to get paint to stick. If that's your goals, I'm just priming not to change the color, not to use the color, or anything like that. I just want the paint to stick to the plastic. That's all you need is light dusting. Okay, moving on from that, we're going to go to Seraphim Sepia. And this is going to be it's kind of a normal wash. It's going to pull pretty heavily, but we're going to do some drastic highlights to kind of show those really fun kind of folds and rivets in this fan, which, by the way, is like totally a weapon, I believe. I just didn't notice that at the beginning. Okay, while that's drying, we're going to move to Shining Silver, and this is going to be all of the kind of inlaid metal portions here. So in the concept art, it shows fairly white. In fact, it almost shows to be the same color as the wraps of the sword handles, right? And the wrapping around that. I chose to paint them differently just because this, you know, looks more metal, and I think it changes it a little bit, and it could be metal as well. Again, the concept art is always stylized in such a way to where colors and hues and different textures and what something is made out of is typically kind of hard. So this is how I'm painting it. You probably could, if you wanted to think, you know, I know in Japanese culture there's a lot of stuff other than metal used for armor. I don't want to say what because I don't know what. I just know it's not metal. And so maybe you could decide it's that. But then the inlay, I don't think makes much sense. It's silver. I'm painting it silver. But yeah, just fine detail brush and take your time here. Alright, next up we have Dark Tone, and this is going to be the kind of wash over all of this silver that we just painted. So I'm trying to have it not pull a whole bunch, because it easily would, as you can see, but then I kind of grab it and then use it elsewhere, so I don't have to reload my brushes often, which is kind of nice, and I get to kind of control it a bit more. Alright, now we're going back, and I forgot the kind of the blades at the end of the fan, which is why I think this is still kind of a weapon here, because that seems a bit excessive otherwise, even if they were just kind of metal. So shining silver again, and then we're going to put dark tone on it once more. Okay, so moving back onto the fan, now that that dark tone needs to dry, we have the skeleton bone out again. And this is going to be for kind of the first level highlight. And even then, the Seraphim Sepia, because we put it in so heavy to the skeleton bone, is a pretty drastic highlight all on its own. Okay, so now I've actually added white to that. I want an even higher kind of complete edge highlight. This will really make it pop and I think look pretty cool. And because I'm going to blend it with the wash here in a second, and so I kind of want these extreme highlights because it's all going to dull down. So I'm super highlighting this up, way more than I think I would normally do, but that's on purpose. Okay, so then we have Seraphim Sepia out again, and this, again, we're just going to kind of, wash on it, not quite as heavy, so we're just going to kind of lightly cover this, and this will kind of help blend it in. Then we're going to get the shining silver out again, and this is going to kind of highlight in that dark toned silver back up, so it doesn't look dirty, right? We want it to kind of be shining in the light here. Alright, Viking Blue, here's the first splash of color, and I really like this. I think it's a very smart choice to kind of do this light blue with the white. I think they pair well together. So using a bit of a smaller brush because I don't want to get too much blue where the white will be, just because white is such a hard color to paint anyway. I want to make sure that it's covering the same color, right? In this case, it's kind of reddish, muted gray, red, miniature plastic, and not some splash of blue as well. This is also why I paint the white early. Speaking of white, I am going to add this into the Viking Blue to add a little bit of a highlight. This is going to be my only highlight on this. You could highlight it up more. I didn't want to. Yeah, I typically try to paint a little bit more realistic, which means I don't have as much exaggerated highlights where it looks like everybody's from Tron or something like that, or have some crazy material that's just like, some jacket from the 90s that's reflecting light and blinding everybody around you. So this is just a cloth, in which case it's not going to highlight too much. Okay, and white gray. So this is the start of something great and fantastic and a wonderful journey. So I'm going to only show you one single coat, but really this is going to be about 5 coats before I'm done. So part of it's because it's really watered down, and one of the reasons it's really watered down is because if it's not, white, at least for me, always tends to dry up on the brush a lot. Even with this, I have to clean the brush pretty often and just kind of, really take ownership of being responsible with my brushes and make sure they're clean. So I clean it quite often here. In fact, about halfway through on the coats, I actually use my conditioner to go ahead and actually clean the brush as well. Yeah, so, you know, with this white, it just, you know, you kind of have to do these thin layers, and you're not exactly painting something super bright underneath as well, which just adds more to it. So, I mean, what it is patience, right? When it's this thin of layers, you're not going to lose any detail, which is nice. What I will say is there are a few different ways to paint. So I actually talked to some other painters about my process here, because what I'm trying to do is bring it all the way up to this white gray, this kind of solid white gray color without any red showing through, so it's completely opaque. And then I'm going to kind of add a little bit of shadow and then some highlights as well, kind of have 3 different shades going on. And that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is, and what a lot of people do, is paint up to like a mid-tone, and then paint the white on top of that to try and speed along the process. One thing I always worry about, and one of the reasons I don't do this, though I've seen people do it just fine, is because if you darken white, it can look really dirty. And I don't want it to look dirty, right? This is supposed to be quite clean looking according to the concept art. And, you know, just dirty white looks gross, and I don't think this is what this is supposed to be. I will say also that a lot of times when they do the midtones, you don't actually end up seeing a lot of the white. You know, they go kind of by the rule of 50-50, where 50% is at least the white or more, so that you get the idea that it's white, but then a lot of it's not white. And I'm wanting this to be almost all white, or at least this white gray. So anyway, this is one coat. As you can see, you can still see a lot of the red through. I'm going to add more and more coats, spend a lot of time on it. I think it's worth it in the end. But as you can see, it's certainly a lot of work here. Painting, it's fine though. I mean, it's not, you know, nothing's too finicky here. Okay, so while we take a break from that a little bit, we're going to do mummy robes, and that's going to be for the mask. So the mask on the concept art is a little bit more of a yellow white. It's not pure white. And so I'm going to use this mummy robes in here. And I'm not worried about the eyes or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of paint the whole thing and just, you know, paint the black on later. Okay, so now we have flesh wash. And this is where we start. This is now several layers out. And so we have this kind of white gray look to it. And now we're adding a little bit of flesh wash. This will, no matter what you do, it's gonna look a little dirty. I'm gonna clean that up. I'm gonna show you how to do that, at least how I do that. So stay tuned for that. But right now I'm just painting in the shadows. So most of the white is being untouched completely, and this is just kind of in all the crevices and whatnot. I'm not worried about anything else. So I'm literally just painting on the wash, if that makes sense, and trying to keep smooth brush motions and all that, so it doesn't pool or do anything weird. I barely have any on my brush, but as you can see, it does make it look a little dirty. Okay, so now I have the white gray out, and I'm just going to kind of bring up, make sure that that's solid, the kind of outside portion here. Alright, and now I'm going to actually bring pure white. So this is actually white. This is kind of the color I actually want you to see, and everything else will be shadow. In which case, I mean, painting it up to white gray was almost my mid-tone. This is really bright. This is a very white and bright miniature, and I can totally see why a lot of people either refuse to paint white or do it sparingly. And yellow too. I went from yellow on the Posed Valkyrie in my previous video, and that was kind of difficult as well. So in here, you want to do all the ridges, obviously, and then anywhere there'd be sun. So like the top of her chest would have some, and these kind of folds here as it kind of folds over, and the flowing out portions would as well a bit more. So as you can see, I don't just do an edge highlight there like I do on kind of the ripples everywhere else. On the top of her arm is another good spot for that. Okay, so now I have white gray out, and we're going to kind of flip-flop a few times here. This is, again, where after you see me paint it, if you want to paint it similar, you can probably paint it a little bit smarter as well when it comes to use of your time and swapping paints. So I forgot to paint in these wraps on the sword hilts here, and like I said, they looked kind of like what I chose to do the silver, but instead they look like kind of cloth. I'm just going to wrap, bring it in here. Wrap it all in, as you could say. So do the white gray, then the flesh wash, and then a white highlight on this as well. So kind of matching the robe. You could have done it along with the robe if you were smarter. Okay, so now I have white gray back out again, and this is quite watered down. And what I'm actually going to do here, and this is kind of how I make it not dirty, is I put a little bit of white gray into the crevices where I put the wash. Now, as you recall, I said that the white gray is quite translucent and takes quite a few coats to cover anything. So this one little coat won't even cover the wash that I put in there that was also light. But it does smooth it out, make it look a little bit cleaner, make it look a little bit more natural. And so this is kind of what I chose to do. And I think it works out really well. It looks like folded white instead of, dirty white, which is kind of the whole goal here. Okay, so I added a little bit of white to those mummy robes, by the way, for the highlight on the face. I don't know how noticeable this is. It's a very small portion of the miniature. It's actually, I don't even think, the focus of the miniature. And the white on mummy robes doesn't show up a whole lot either. Okay, so now we have Ivory, and this is for the skin. So I don't know if they're necessarily geishas or what. I don't know the story behind the Koi clan or kind of the reasons why they would be so white, like makeup white. But I'm going to go ahead and choose Ivory for this. I have like an elfic flesh and some other flesh tones that are kind of whitish, but they're a little bit more yellow than even the Ivory. And in the concept art, they look almost white, but I wanted, again, another different color, and so the Ivory, I think, was a good choice there. Okay, for the fan detail here, I originally went with Khaki. I'm going to go and show you that because it shows me kind of coloring it for the first time. I'm going to go over it with another color here in a moment. I don't think this showed up well enough. It shows up pretty good on camera. So that's not bad, but in real life, this is not noticeable enough for me, though I don't want it to pop out a whole lot either. I want it to look kind of natural. So I'm going to pick a different color here in a moment, but as you can see, I trace a general line, but then after it fills in, I can kind of even it out. Okay, so Monster Brown is the color that I did choose. So this is going to be the color that we actually use in the end. And again, I'm just kind of coloring in the portion that already has. Very subtle difference, but a little bit more noticeable. Alright, and Cavalry Brown. This is one of my favorite reds. I know it says brown in the name, but this is totally a red. At least in my eyes it is. And a very good one too. So this is going to be for her rope, a bit of her hair, and some kind of side head ornaments as well. I'm also going to end up using it on this back kind of clasp for her hair. I never noticed it even when looking at the miniature to plan the painting. so I didn't assign a color to it. And then once I saw it, I wanted to wait until I was done with the miniature to finally decide on the color to actually paint it with. But I do paint it in this Cavalry red in the end, so if you're following along, just take note of that. You'll see it later on though when I do end up doing it. Alright, next up is black gray, and this is going to be kind of detail work here. So there's going to be all the wraps. Now, you could wait to do this. I did it perhaps a bit early. I probably should have done the gold first because a lot of the wraps go on the gold, so I'm going to have to come back later and then paint on the gold. So again, you know, learn from how I do it so you can maybe perhaps do it more efficiently. But these go on, as you can see, I didn't even paint it yet because I don't want to be bothered with when painting the gold to try and avoid this black, because if I don't, then this black gray will go on the gold much easier than the gold will go on the black gray. And we're also going to get all of the hair, so just go and cover that up. You know, make sure to get all the portions that go on the on the model itself, and not just up above. But yeah, definitely take your time here. It's a very fine detail. Alright, next up is dark stone. This is going to be for the Scabbards. Again, just trying to, you know, add more and more colors. I'm a big fan of that. I actually think that helps sell the model, because not everything is the same color all the time, obviously, and so this kind of differentiates this from, you know, the black gray, which you could have done in the black gray if you don't want to use a different color. If you don't have one that would match well, this would look just fine in black gray. Now we're adding white. This is again for a little bit of a highlight. This is only slightly noticeable, but I don't know. In my mind, I tell myself that these little details stack up to where even if you don't look at the model and be like, oh, you highlighted the scabbard, it gives an overall appearance of a little bit more realism. So we're also going to do this with the black and add a little bit of white in here for the highlight. Now, one thing you always want to be careful about that I've noticed and from my painting is if you go too gray, if you highlight too much, it'll look gray. So anyway, just be careful to not add too much, right? You want to still have it look black. Next up is gold. This is going to be a lot of gold. There's a lot of trim here, a lot of kind of head ornaments here that we're going to have to do. And as you can see, I'm kind of taking my time and making sure I'm pretty careful here. Most things at this point are painted. We're actually kind of on the home stretch, so this is kind of a long step. So I want to do it right and not have to do a whole lot of touch-up, because that actually adds a lot more time just when I'm trying to actually just be quick. So I'm taking my time, making sure to do a really good job here. I can speed up on stuff like the top of the head ornament and whatnot, but otherwise we're going pretty slow here. And then the trim is going to be pretty detailed as well. So, you know, just don't rush it. You know, this is a very cool miniature, and you should take your time and do a good job on it. And you will be impressed where time investment equals better quality many times. I'm not saying there's no skill involved. I'm not saying there's no techniques involved or practice or anything like that. But in general, the longer you take, the better it'll look. Alright, so we're wrapping up here, and I just want to say that this was sped up pretty fast as well, and there was just a lot of it. As you can see, though, the miniature is almost done at this point, which is kind of nice, and I think it's kind of beneficial to keep this later, just because you get that sense of satisfaction from completing it, because it is such a long task. But overall, yeah, pretty worth it. I'm really happy with it. Okay, so now we're going to take some flesh wash, and we're just going to add this to the head ornament and the bigger portions of gold, just to give it a little bit of definition. But that's it. So kind of on the sides there and on the head ornament, and really not much more. Okay, Deathclaw Brown, this is for her kind of sandal here. I don't know what this is called. I used to, actually. I feel like I used to. This kind of platform sandal, that is a piece of wood block that she's kind of standing on. Alright, and now we have black-gray out again. I did miss some more some more wraps on that gold, as you recall, so I now have to paint that in. This was the kind of portion where, well, maybe you keep that black-gray and you don't quite do it yet, and instead, you know, do this after the gold. I don't know, it's a toss-up. I think you're going to have to kind of flip-flop either way. Okay, so as I said, I was going to paint this earlier in Cavalry Brown, and I'm doing so now that kind of we're to the point where we need to do the detail work. I think keeping in the red, because I almost did this in blue, kind of like her inner skirt, which would have been a really cool splash of color. But the Koi clan is pretty red, so I'm going to kind of keep it in that vein. Okay, Mechanic is standard gray is out, and this is, I'm showing you this one live, but then I'm going to speed through the rest. This is some of the hardest freehand work I've done, just because it's not a flat surface, right? This is like trying to paint with the ripples, and there's 2 points to that, right? First of all, it's hard to control your brush, especially if the side hits a portion you don't like. Another part is it wouldn't be a perfect circle if it's in a ripple, right? It would morph and move with the clothes, right? Laid flat it would be, but that doesn't mean it actually would look flat right now. So it's very hard, and in general, I just try and get a feel for how it should look. And in general, I just try to place them where they would be mostly circles. Because I don't think I'm artistic enough to really decide how it would flow with the robes. So again, just a very interesting portion. So really, I'm painting a circle, and then I'm thickening the bottom and top of that circle, and then a line in between. And you'll notice I'm a little messy. I'm not trying to be, I just am. However, I'm going to show you how I clean it up afterwards to make it, I think, look way better, at least twice as good. I feel a lot more clean and crisp and kind of well done. Now, in the concept art, there is more than just that top. I just added a little bit on kind of her torso cloth. Technically, there's a little bit more in some of the shadows. That is so small and hard to reach. I'm not going to bother. I think it looks fine as is. But these bottom ones, I'm gonna go ahead and do it, at least on the top outside cloak. I'm not trying to add this. You see how rough that one is. I mean, it's hard. It's so hard to get a really crisp line here. I've heard micro pens are good. I need to get some of those. I haven't quite yet, but I will, and I'll let you know how I feel about those. I'm not quite sure exactly how well they'd work on a non-flat surface like this. I mean, where it's just so ripply. I don't know. And part of me also thinks it looks kind of good, like painted on, right? It looks very, I don't know, like it should from, you know, maybe feudal Japan. Anyway, yeah, I'm just kind of painting them every so often. There's no concept art on the back, so I don't know where they are here. I'm just trying to kind of have them match. But in general, I'm trying to make them all kind of look cohesive and kind of like the direction of the middle line and whatnot. See, like that big ripple there and how it's not a perfect circle. I think that's more accurate to do it that way. But again, maybe not. It looks fine. It looks fine from far away, right? No, it looks fine in general. You're not like super looking at it, and I think I'm very happy with how this turns out. But I'm gonna be quiet now, and I'll talk to you again when we clean it up. So we have white out now. This is quite watered down. And what I'm doing here is, and yes, I'm not using the white gray, but just actual white. I'm cleaning up the edges a little bit with the white. And it's kind of nice because I can just have the edge of it go there. And then I'm actually just dabbing in, see? Okay, it already looks way better just with that little bit. I now have a clean outside line and two really good lines in the middle. And I do this on anyone I feel needs a bit of improvement for the shape or whatnot. This is something very nice to do. I've done it a few times, and it makes it look so much better. And then you don't have to be super perfect, you know, on your first go, right? You have a few attempts to kind of clean this up. Alright, so black gray is out again, and just because I missed something, I looked back at the concept art, and under her breast here, I don't know if this is support for that, or if this is just support for kind of, she's got like this wrap that goes kind of on her upper abdomen here, and I don't know if it's for that, but either way, that should be black gray as well. Now we have actual Abaddon blackout, and this is for kind of her eyes and her mouth. And the concept art, it's a mask on a face, and there is a difference there, and they have kind of some tie points. Those aren't eyebrows. My understanding is that's actually where the mask is tied onto her face. That's not here, so I didn't paint it. Hemp rope is out, and I was tempted to leave the base like this, just because I like the color. But I end up, I add stuff, but I end up covering up even more. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. But this is just kind of the top portion of the base here. Alright, so I just kind of quickly showed you the actual red that this miniature is underneath without the prime on it that kind of lightens it up. And it's very close to this prime red. And so or this pure red, excuse me. So I'm using this pure red from Army Painter to kind of paint the entire rim. 2 coats, I think, does quite well on this. That's all I did. Okay, after 2 coats, I'm getting Abaddon black. This is a Daimyo, and therefore it should have some black to signify that. Normally you would put a base and clip it onto the sides, but because we're painting our miniatures and painting the sides, and we don't want to deal with putting, you know, odd-looking plastic bits on these kind of nicely painted miniatures that look more realistic, I am painting this kind of rim black. It doesn't look as noticeable over my black table, and I apologize for that, but trust me, on the board it looks fantastic. And you'll see it at kind of the end turnabout portion as well. So here I'm just kind of steadying the base with one of my fingers, and then painting slightly on just kind of the thickness of the small brush. It's not quite perfect, so afterwards I'm going to kind of come in at a different angle, see, like right here, and just kind of touch up and make it a little bit more straight. It's not perfect, it's not going to be perfect, it's hand-drawn, I'm not taping or stenciling or anything like that, but trust me, it looks plenty straight and looks really crisp and nice from pretty much any distance. Okay, varnishing that, so let's varnish all the paint. All the paint's now varnished. We're going to add some natural leaf litter by Green Stuff World. I'm going to link to this in the description below. I don't believe I did for the Posed Valkyrie, but if you guys are interested in some leaves, go ahead. They also sell essentially hole punches in the shape of leaves that you can use on real leaves, so you can make your own leaves. The hole punch costs a bit more because it's not just a whole bunch of, you know, punched leaves, but that means you can do different any leaves you find, right? It's the different colors, different shapes. Kind of cool. I'm tempted to get them, but for now I'm just gonna buy theirs. But these are all pretty much the exact same shape and exact same leaf used, so they're pretty much all the same color. There's a few like green ones in there and whatnot, but for the most part it's this brown. And as you notice in this one, I am hand gluing each one down. I actually end up gluing more off camera later on, last minute. But anyway, I'm going to varnish that on with the leaves once the glue dries. So now everything's varnished again. I feel this helps hold down the leaves a little bit more. Just because they're so small, I want to make sure they're held well. And now this is some watered down glue, just some regular, you saw the kind of, Elmer's glue, the school glue, the white glue. And I'm just kind of... I'm not worried about getting full coverage. I want some of that hemp rope to still show up underneath because, again, I think it's a good color. But just a little bit of glue here, and I'm getting this fine turf burnt grass flock, and I'm just going to sprinkle that all over and then, tap the bottom of the base to kind of pop it out. But that will add kind of the grass look, a little bit more texture. Here you can see it now. So this is the final result. This is after, 5 hours, I believe, of painting. It was almost 4 hours of just footage, and obviously I did those white layers afterwards, a little bit of cleanup, just minor things like that. Varnishing it obviously took time, just those little bits. But very, very happy with how she turned out. I think it looks great. Definitely a very dynamic and unique miniature in this line of miniatures because she's so white. In fact, until I paint the Kami, I think she's going to be one of the most unique looking miniatures on the board. Lots of different color uses here. The armor's kind of cool. I didn't gloss coat the armor, so that's the shiny metallic paint with the varnish on it. And anyway, yeah, so that's kind of the finished miniature. That's what she looks like. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly actually enjoyed painting it. The white was a bit frustrating, but otherwise, painting in the fan and the swords and the robe design and the splash of blue and kind of the high sandal and adding the leaves, I really enjoyed this miniature. It's a really fun one. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Again, as always, I want to thank my patrons. You can see some of them listed here on the screen now, but really all my viewers, all of my supporters, you guys are all great, and I really appreciate it. If you want to see more, I will be painting a lot more Rising Sun, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and if you want to be notified when I do post them, because YouTube doesn't like showing you them right away, because their algorithm is weird, go ahead and click that bell icon as well, so you'll be notified when I actually do post them. I post about 2 to 3 videos per week, so you're not going to get spammed per se, but and they'll all be kind of this quality, hopefully. Anyway, guys, thanks so much, and I will talk to you soon.